everybody. Welcome to the county seat. I'm Chad Booth. You know, a recent commercial caught our attention. It was a group that is critical of the BLM for how they're managing lands in soil and land conservation, vegetation treatments. And we decided that we needed to get the air cleared on that issue. We're going to start in our conversation today about these kinds of projects in the basics.
Vegetation treatment for soil and water conservation in the arid West. The concept sounds good. I mean, who wouldn't want to conserve water and create habitat for Bambi and Thumper and songbirds, sage-grouse, and livestock? Well, apparently the environmental group SUA, because if you look at the commercials they're running, it looks like the big, mean, bad bullies with the BLM are killing innocent little trees, and they have you believe that we're fighting against Mother Nature. But if you take away the emotional image of trees being ruthlessly torn from the ground and just look at the facts, it might paint a different picture. So let's consider these 4 important concepts about vegetation treatment and why we do it in the basics. The first concept is encroachment. Pinyon juniper trees are invasive in nature. Given the chance to overtake other plants, they will. And they have, as you can see in these historical photos. One taken 80 years ago, the other a couple of years ago. This happens because the root structure of the PJ spreads out as wide as it is tall and robs other plants from getting the water they need. PJ crowns start to restrict sunlight in the understory and competing plants start to die off. To finish the competition off, their needles are quite toxic and eventually poison the soil under the tree. Unchecked, they will eventually overtake most arid landscapes and eliminate plant diversity. Which leads us to forage, the second argument for reversing encroachment. Think about all the critters who live in the arid wild lands. Bugs, snakes, mice, rabbits, songbirds, raptors, deer, elk, horse, sage-grouse, and depending on the time of year, livestock who are rotating through the area depending upon the condition of the grasses. Not one of those species can use juniper as a food source. Why do you think they make such good fence posts? If you don't hold the line on pinyon juniper, animal and plant life will go away by either starvation or migration. Another thing to consider is the amount of water they take out of the ecosystem. A study being conducted in Central Oregon currently estimates that a 12-foot high pinyon consumes about 25 gallons of water each month. Times that by 100 trees per acre, and that's 2,500 gallons per month per acre. Gonna really add up. Several post-treatment areas reveal the reintroduction of springs, which would support that fact. Wildfire mitigation also has to be considered in isolating the pinyon stands. Fires can move vertically and horizontally. When they do both at once, they're devastating, sometimes literally cooking the earth to the point that it takes decades to rehabilitate. Fires also put tons of burnt carbon into the air and destroy wildlife, so mitigating the fuel load becomes critical to a healthy ecosystem. Finally, think about the view shed. If you're driving down a dirt road with 20-foot high trees on either side of you, you can't see anything but a green tunnel. Thin out the trees back to the slopes of the hills, and now you're talking about a monumental quality landscape. Mother Nature is a brutal land manager. Oh, she gets the job done, but usually on a large scale, at costs far worse than mankind incurs in his management. Think about it. Before man, thousands of species went extinct without us. Whole landscapes changed, entire continents wiped out. If we know Mother Nature's tricks, with a little effort, we can keep land at its prime and best her at her own game. For the county seat, I'm Joe Davis.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
Let's be honest, you don't know much about Beaver County.
Well, let me tell you about it. It's the birthplace of outlaw Butch Cassidy and inventor Philo T. Farnsworth. Some of the best skiing in Utah is at Eagle Point. You've got camping, Canyon Breeze Golf Course, Crusher and the Tushers, Beaver Territorial Courthouse, snowmobiling, Renewable Energy, Pioneer Car Show, Squeaky Cheese, Ghost Towns to explore, best water in the country, Paiute ATV trails, Old Frisco Kilns, horse racing, hunting, fishing, and it's a good place to live. Beaver County, mountains of fun. I could tell you more, but why don't you come and see it for yourself?
The Utah Farm Bureau began as a collection of farmers supporting each other to raise the food we enjoy. Today, Farm Bureau membership encompasses everyone, whether ranchers, growers, or just everyday folks like you and me. Members enjoy discounts on items like vehicles and ATVs, or insurance that's very affordable. You don't have to be a farmer to join, and dues are small, but together we make a big difference in keeping our food supply local and abundant. Join Utah Farm Bureau.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are talking about vegetation treatments, water conservation, and projects that are taking place around the state. Utah has been one of the most active states in handling these land improvement projects, and that's probably in great part due to the fact that Utah has partnered to leverage the money that's available to do these kinds of vegetation treatments. So joining us for that conversation are one of those partners, or representative thereof, Miles Moretti, who is the president of the Mule Deer Foundation. We also have Tyler Thompson, who works with the DNR in charge of their water conservation. I guess you would call it a division or project. How is it that Utah ended up just gathering all this attention for, people like you and Sportsmen for Fish and Wildlife and all these different people got together and really, I mean, they've levered a bunch of money, $1 million+ easily. How did that happen?
Well, go back a little bit. In the early 2000s, we had a severe drought in Utah where we had lots of vegetation die off. And there was, the Division of Wildlife Resources started a habitat initiative, and that started out, and then all of a sudden we had a guy named Mike Styler come in. And we knew him from the legislature, and he decided to call it the Watershed Restoration Initiative. And he took it clear back to Washington, D.C. to get funding and brought the partners together. So we give a lot of credit for Mike for his vision back then.
How has it worked?
So the way it works is we've got about 5 different regional teams with a bunch of partners from a whole bunch of different state and federal agencies, NGOs, sportsmen's groups. We all get together and develop these project proposals each year and implement those project proposals. And we've figured out a way to kind of work across ownership boundaries. We've figured out a way to work at a watershed scale. And we've done a lot of good work in the state.
Do you get buy-in from guys that have ranching allotments, even though a lot of what happens goes to wildlife habitat?
Absolutely. We're in this for healthy rangelands and healthy forests. And the bottom line is we have neglected our forests and rangelands for too long. And they are in such sad shape that the amount of grazing capacity on those lands is greatly reduced. If we can go in and do these habitat restoration projects, it's going to produce more forage for everybody, and the land's going to be healthier. And I don't care who you are, you should want that. I mean, some of the devastating wildfires we've had in the West, it's because we failed to manage our public lands. And that's not good for anybody.
But the groups like SUA, they would contend that the reason that the whole problem is that man has manipulated this through the years, and it should just be in the hands of Mother Nature.
Well, one of the things you have to remember is those ads are not designed to worry about what the landscape looks like. Those ads are designed to fundraise. And bottom line is if they really cared about the health of the land, they would work with us and they would be there as a partner and help us create these healthy landscapes. But they don't want to do that. They just want to fundraise off of what we're doing. And frankly, that commercial is a lot of misinformation. And that's just the world we live in today.
If you didn't treat it, what would it look like?
There's obviously an overabundance of pinyon juniper out there. That point is pretty hard to argue. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to diversify those even age stands. We're trying to come in and do what a fire would do, what Mother Nature would do. But we're doing it in a much more controlled fashion so that it doesn't get out of control. If we don't come in and manage those areas, it's like your garden. If you don't manage your garden, if you don't clip your lawn, it gets out of control and it gets dangerous, and we're just trying to go in there and make it so that there's a diverse vegetation types.
And to follow up on that point, these forests, pinyon juniper forests, that have invaded in the last 50 to 100 years, they set up these catastrophic fires. And all we have to do is remember back to the Milford fire, how fast that was moving, and then go back, and those places that we didn't treat, there's just cheatgrass there now, and that's not good for anything, not good for wildlife, not good for livestock. But go back into those areas that even after the fire, this effort went back and restored those areas.
You know, back to the garden analogy, you don't go in and just throw the seed on the ground and hope for the best. You go in and take the cover off, you go in and till the soil. And when you're doing that on 1,000 acres and using a chain, it looks pretty rough, and it's a very destructive process. But you go back to that area 5 years, 10 years after the fact, and the grasses have come back, the forbs have come back, the shrubs are back, the animals are back in there. It looks a lot different. You just have to kind of move past that ugly stage that's being depicted in that commercial.
And that's a short-term thing. I can tell you that the vegetation treatments come back fairly quickly. A devastating fire like Miller Flat, you still drive out there and there's dead trees standing everywhere. Does that look healthy? Does that look good? And the thing of it is these treatments increase forage capacity 100%, 200%, 1,000%, and it benefits everything. It benefits everything from a rabbit to songbirds, that diverse habitat, and of course, then the big game and livestock also get the benefit from that. But it just produces so much more valuable forage to the ecosystem.
So could we actually keep everything in its prime condition by just doing little bits of treatment?
Well, one thing we've learned is we don't go into those areas that have 400-year-old trees. We go into those areas that have 100-year-old trees or less. And that's the ones we want to focus on, because that's what's invaded into the landscape. And we classify these things into phase 1, 2, and 3 vegetation types, and we try to focus on the 1s and 2s. That's where they're invading in, and especially species like sage grouse that potentially is listed as endangered. They don't like trees. They evolved in a landscape that was sagebrush and very few trees, and so part of this is we're not also doing a healthy landscape. We're trying to keep a species off the endangered species list.
And we're actually elevating projects that have that goal in mind, that actually have these multiple goals, and we have a ranking process and a regional team process that actually elevates those projects. So that is our goal, is to try to provide a multiple benefit out there on the landscape.
Is our water situation on the range, do the springs look a little bit better after you do the treatments? Does there seem to be a connection here that is measurable or visible? Yeah,
absolutely. We've heard for years doing this, these different projects that springs are starting to flow again, that ephemeral streams are starting to flow again. So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence out there about water coming back after these treatments. And then Dr. Roundy out of Brigham Young University recently published a paper where he showed that the amount of available moisture in the soil after we do some of these treatments actually increases in the spring, which is extremely important for our projects when we have seed on the ground, by up to 29 days. And so having that moisture availability for our grasses and forbs is extremely beneficial.
And that's one of the things about pinyon juniper. There's no understory, there's no vegetation underneath the trees. And so when the water hits it, it pretty much runs off. When you got grass and forbs and shrubs there, that water gets to percolate into the ground. And we've had projects in northwest Colorado where we've removed pinyon juniper, and we actually found a spring we didn't know was there.
If you had to give Utah a report card, what would it be?
Well, Utah's leading the West in restoration projects. Everybody goes, how do we do this? And you know, in this day and age with tight federal budgets and things, it's hard for these states to get the funding that Utah has had for many, many years. And so I give Utah an A++ because of the effort they've done. But that's because people have come together and said, we're going to make this work. We're not going to get in our individual agencies and our individual silos. And I don't see any state where that happens other than Utah.
And there's just something about Utah that we are all kind of built to work together. And there's just something about the way that we can come together and put projects on the ground that's been exciting to watch.
Final thought for you guys.
A picture of a even age stand of pinyon juniper that's invaded all the rangeland, it may look visually pretty, but it has no value to wildlife, livestock. Very few songbirds, anything live there. And what they don't realize is it's basically a desert. It just pushes out everything, and it isn't what was there naturally.
You know, my takeaway, especially related to the SUA ad, is that there's always two sides to the story, and our side has a lot more folks on our side. And so I'd encourage people to go to our website, watershed.utah.gov, and learn about, you know, who we are, what we're doing, and how we're making things better in Utah.
You actually have some pretty good videos there.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, and one last thought for us, if you want to learn more about the Mule Deer Foundation, go to muledeer.org and to our website and learn about what we're doing.
Okay, final side shoot. How much of the money that you raise do you put into conservation projects?
We put over 88% of our money that we raise goes to mission accomplishment, and so we try to be as efficient as we can and get as much money on the ground, and that's where we're, no matter what state we're working in.
So primarily your goal is habitat improvement.
Absolutely. We're a habitat-based organization that just happens to have a critter group at our head. Mule deer is the species we focus on, but we're really a habitat-based organization.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for joining us today on the county seat. We'll be back with a personal look at how all of this looks when it's on the ground right after this commercial break.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
The Layton Hills Mall offers more than just shopping. Bring the whole family and enjoy SeaQuest Interactive Aquarium to feed the fish and exotic birds, hold live reptiles, and even swim with the stingrays. Or pump up the action and visit Dartside, Utah's premier soft foam dart tag arena. And don't forget the Great Room Escape, where you can challenge your friends to solving mysteries inside themed rooms. So come and experience great fun at the Layton Hills Mall and visit playindavis.com for other great activities.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation so far today has been about soil conservation, water conservation. The two actually are intertwined. And now we want to turn our attention to not the theory behind it, but what it actually looks like on the ground and how much impact it has on somebody that's out on that land, working that land, and bonding with that land every day.
I'm Hal Hamlin, and I'm a third-generation rancher in this part of the country. My family has raised cattle up on this sandy desert country for 3 generations, and it's been a real asset to our family, not as much economically, but as a way of life. About 4 years ago, in 2013 and 14, they did a bull hog project all around here. Pretty much the same treatment as you see with the chaining, only a bull hog that grinds it. And in the process, they were able to get the water table to stay instead of run off down canyons and floods and washes. The pinyon and juniper take, I've heard of roughly anywhere from 15 to 25 gallons of water out of here, if it's here, a day. And I know they did around this spring. I know those trees took that out because it's rejuvenated back to where we can use it. To stop chaining, they show what I would call the bombshell of chaining, where the trees are actually disturbed and the ground is disturbed, but they never show 2 years later what the results of that was. And this is what was here before the chaining. This is the exact spots that was chained 2 years in 2015, but these are spots that are left because of historical cultural sites, because of the wanting to leave vegetation and cover for the deer and the wildlife and for the cattle. It's shade for these animals and protection. And we're going to walk north up here about 20 yards, and you'll see what has happened after chaining has taken place. You'll see that there are grasses growing, putting nutrients into the soil. You'll also see that you can look up and see the pink cliffs of Bryce Canyon, which you never would have seen coming through here before this chaining.
This area up here is, I've been through here when you couldn't see anything. And today, it's quite amazing to see what a little work and a little effort will do. And I didn't know that they could ever have this much grass.
And since we've done that, when I come up here in June and turn the water on, there's water here year-round in the spring for the wildlife. I worry about the land as far as erosion. I worry about the land as far as the feed and development of it. But this is more to me. Just a minute ago, we had some ATV people come by. And it's something that everybody enjoys, and I have a responsibility to take care of that. I have a responsibility to leave this land better than I got it from my grandparent and my father, my mother. It's on my mother's side. And I really don't want to meet them on the other side with the running down of their ranch. So I have a great interest in it.
It's interesting to note that the area we just visited is the very same area that is coming under scrutiny by the environmental organizations with their ads they're running on TV. We will continue our county seat conversation, wrapping up the day with final thoughts right after this break.
Look south to adventure. Look south to beauty. Look south to San Juan County. Out here, the road goes on forever, and what you'll find will change how you see the world. Climb on your OHV and discover forgotten landscapes and vistas that challenge the imagination. From Blanding and Monticello to the cliff faces of Monument Valley, we're open and ready for you to explore. San Juan County, Utah's Canyon Country.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
Welcome back to the county seat. Now, here's my 2 cents worth. You know, today we have learned that things aren't always what they seem. A chaining of invasive trees in the semi-arid West looks reminiscent of pictures of the destruction of rainforests for the development of man. But that is not the case here, as we have learned. This process improves the entire ecosystem and brings far more benefits to nature than it does to man. It improves habitat for deer, elk, songbirds, and raptors. It restores millions of gallons of water to the aquifers and groundwater, and it results in a diversity of plant life that can serve many creatures. It is basically done for all by those who raise cattle and manage wildlife. Well, there is no doubt from having been on the ground looking at this in person that the world is a better place overall for the efforts of the Watershed Restoration Initiative. I know it from having seen it with my own eyes. Wildlife and water resource managers, along with ranchers, have measured its science. They have proof that it works, and the extreme environmental organizations know it too. They have seen it too, firsthand. Members of these organizations have been on these range tours that I have attended. They have seen the results. Yet, they choose to tell a quarter truth, only showing the necessary destruction that precedes rehabilitation to build a case for the removal of most uses of Western lands. Yet they would rather have it cut off from humanity, expel the livestock, and let the aquifers dry up and the trees burn in massive destructive fires, blaming the devastation on the other activities of man, rather than address the problem based on what is good for the land itself. I believe, in my opinion, that these misrepresentations are intentional, and the campaigns are designed to raise funds, initiate litigation, only to raise funds again. I base this conclusion on the fact that I have yet to see them put any money or labor into actually improving the ground. I would love to be proven wrong on that belief, but sadly, I don't think I am. That's my 2 cents worth. Thanks for watching. You can see the show again on Facebook or YouTube, and we encourage you to share it and comment about it. And we will see you next week on the County Seat.